It's time for us to check back in on the Uvalde school shooting situation. And before we get going, just know that there is no way this video gets monetized. So please consider hitting up the channel subscribe star or memberships button or anything else you use to keep us afloat. I first covered this event during a tubcast with Lilith, right when it happened. And back then we could only go by word of mouth on what happened, but since then a full video of events has come out. I won't show anything gruesome, but I will use it to narrate, so here's a quick recap. On May 24th, 2022, Salvador Ramos started his day by shooting his grandmother in the face, severely wounding her. She miraculously survived, being released from the hospital on June 28th, though she will likely never speak again. The current theory is that they got into a fight over her disappointment that he failed to graduate from high school. After the fight, Ramos drove to the school, where he actually crashed his car into a ditch. People from a nearby funeral home came out to assist, but he began shooting at them, causing them to run away and call the cops. Afterward, Ramos leisurely walked into the school, barricaded himself into a classroom, and began executing students. He was, astonishingly, given approximately an hour and a half to basically do whatever he wanted by the responding police, because the ranking officer, Pedro Arredondo, misidentified the event as a hostage situation and not an active shooter. In response, the police called in tactical officers from the nearby Border Patrol unit, which was 70 miles away, cordoned off the school campus from the public, took up a defensive posture, and attempted to make contact with Ramos in order to negotiate. All things that you should do during a hostage situation, but also all things that you shouldn't do during an active shooter situation, because all that does is give them more time. Time that Ramos used to do 2 sweeps of classroom 111 and 112, allowing him to shoot each person a second time to ensure that nobody survived. And only one child did survive in the end. Incredulously, this led to mistakes like the cops saying, "If you need help, shout," a student shouting help, which alerted Ramos, who then moved between 111 and 112 through a shared back office, killing her. It would be a comedy of errors if it weren't so grotesque. Eventually, it was the Border Patrol, seen here in camo with helmets and heavier armor, that took a janitor's key, opened the door to the classroom, and finally killed Ramos, while the police under the command of Arredondo stood back and watched. It's important to note at this point that Arredondo is the police chief of the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, and that the officers seen throughout most of the videos are UCISD officers. They're not the police force of the city of Uvalde, but rather the school district's own security. Their jurisdiction is only the schools within the district, and at the time of the shooting, Arredondo had 6 officers working under him. School boards started having their own police forces assigned directly to them in Texas after the 2018 Santa Fe shooting. So, since we've last talked about this, there's been a number of very fishy developments. The police responsible have been rapidly changing their public stance as new information keeps coming to light. They've hired on a private law firm with the hopes to resist in court any release of police body cam footage or other private records, arguing that the files could be highly embarrassing or evoke emotional or mental distress. They've stopped cooperating with the state of Texas's own investigation into the shooting and how it was handled. And of course, this very ominous public statement that all victims were killed by Salvador Ramos and nobody else makes it sound like they're desperately trying to hide that their own officers fucked up. However, despite how popular that theory was on social media, the school security camera footage seems to disprove that. It shows officers hunkering down for a hostage situation. It shows many mistakes, most blatant of all how they're just standing around, following Arredondo's orders, even as they hear repeated waves of gunshots go off. It even shows an officer sanitizing his hands. You gotta stop that COVID spread. But it doesn't show officers shooting children. That being said, how did this footage get out anyway? After all, Uvalde is fighting tooth and nail against any investigative efforts, even going so far as expelling journalists and parents from a city council meeting where testimony and security footage was being presented to city officials.
So why aren't you allowing reporters to stay in the building?
People are intimidated.
Sir? Intimidated by who? By reporters?
Yeah.
So we have to leave the building is what you're
Yes.
saying? Because people are intimidated by us.
Yes.
What we want is the truth. Come in and protect our children.
A lot of people are intimidated. The officers.
Can we have you exit the building, please?
Are you a parent, sir?
Yeah.
Can I ask you why they would be intimidated by
No,
us?
sir, I can ask you to leave again, please.
I understand that, but why would they be intimidated by us? Has someone complained to you, sir, about being intimidated?
Actually, yes.
Like
We
who?
actually had a lady that had a panic attack last week.
Because reporters were in the building?
Yeah, she just freaked out.
Okay.
Well, ultimately, it was leaked by the Austin American Statesman, a news outlet local to Texas, 2 days ago. They published an edited 4-minute video, which they released on their website and is fit for TV, while they dumped onto their YouTube channel the full hour and a half, including body cam footage, school security cam footage, and footage from the funeral home across the street. Here's the city's response to this leak from a recent city council meeting.
I'll say one thing since you brought up the video, and then the press will address your questions after the meeting. But I want to go on the record. The way that video was released today is one of the most chicken things I've ever seen. Yes, I've wanted the video released, but all these news agencies knew that we were working with the House committee. They were going to have a meeting Sunday to give the report to the family members Sunday morning. And then Sunday afternoon at around 2 o'clock, they were going to come back and answer the family's questions and show them the video. Every news agency knew that they were talking to the House. The House went to the Austin American-Statesman and KVEU TV and told them this was going to happen. And the response was, well, we all have a job to do. There was no reason for those families to have to see. All I've seen is the first little segment of 4 minutes, but there's no reason for the families to have to see that. I mean, they were going to see the video, but they didn't need to see the gunman coming in and hear the gunshots. They don't need to relive that. They've been through enough. And that was the most chicken way to put this video out today. Whether it was released by the DPS or who it was released for, in my opinion, was very unprofessional, which this investigation has been, in my opinion, since day one.
This was the proper thing to do, man. You were dragging your heels. It's a journalist's job to report on events as accurately as possible, to uncover the truth, even if it's politically uncomfortable. And the response here just seems to be pure cope. Yeah, okay, the families don't need to see it again, fair enough. They can change the channel. They can always not go to the website or to the YouTube video, but the rest of the public deserves to have access to it.
It was chicken shit
Yeah.
to release that video the way you did it. That part of that video was not supposed to be in what they're doing on Sunday. That was not supposed to be there. They did that for ratings and they did that for money. And that's the only reason they put that out there.
Ratings and money? I mean, I don't even know if TV ratings matter anymore. But what money? How much YouTube revenue do you think a video of a school shooting is going to generate? I know I'm not getting anything.
What about the cops? Are they chicken shit?
We're going to handle that.
He said that they did a good job. You still think they did a good job?
Adam, I'm not going to get into an argument with you on that deal. I haven't seen the video yet, but I can tell you that one of the officers you called that got grace in that deal, in that video, he goes back down that hall 3 times trying to get in that room. 3 different times. 3 different times.
Ask everybody if they think that
I know what everybody thinks, and we need to let the investigation come through.
it's chicken shit.
And yeah, this is the best response. Just right to their face, we're the cops chicken shit, and they just dodge it. I think they know that heads need to roll here. You can see, for example, the father of one of the victims, who is also a police officer, being held back by his fellow officers because they were ordered not to go in. It could be cowardice, it could be following the chain of command too strictly, even though clearly on the ground it's a different situation, but man, this was a massive fuck-up. A transcript between the UCISD police and a Texas Department of Public Safety agent makes it sound like a chain of command problem. The agent asked, "Are there still kids in the classrooms? If so, they just need to go in." The police reply that he got back was, "It's unknown at this time." The agent reiterated, "Y'all don't know if there's kids in there? If there's kids in there, we need to go in there." And the police reply was again, "Whoever is in charge will determine that." The agent, at this point exasperated, took charge in evacuating parts of the school that the UCISD officers left alone, saying that at least he could save those kids. At this point, the whole thing seems to be, at least from the outside, a product of Chief Arredondo's massive mistake. And since the shooting, he's resigned from his position on the Uvalde City Council, as well as been placed on administrative leave from his position within the Uvalde School District. Arredondo, meanwhile, despite transcripts between the various parties clearly show him calling the shots, has since denied he was the ranking officer on the scene. Arredondo was the one trying all the janitor's keys, approximately 10 pounds worth of keys in a massive ring, on an unrelated door in an attempt to identify a master key that could unlock all the school's doors, including 111 and 112. While at the same time, a short distance away, the police had access to a Halligan bar, a device used by firefighters to open locked doors during a house fire. Keep in mind, this was their primary jurisdiction. They're police for the school board. Why did they not have their own keys or know which keys went where? Why did they not have a plan for this sort of thing? Why did they mistakenly identify it as a hostage situation? Why did Arredondo ditch his radio right when the event began? Yeah, that happened too. People are out here saying that the cops killed kids accidentally, and that's why it's being covered up, but that always seemed a bit far-fetched, and it also doesn't seem to be true at this point. But frankly, we don't need that to assign blame here. The police were incompetent, they were unprepared, they assessed the situation wrong, and nobody wanted to step up, take ownership, and be the leader of the situation when it was desperately needed, and we can probably pin at least a good chunk of the blame on Arredondo. In response, people are calling for tighter gun controls, and I'm just thinking, are you fucking serious? Yeah, the shooter got his guns legally, and fair enough, but you want to concentrate all of the legitimate usage of guns into the hands of the police when they're this incompetent? I know, not all cops, but it's still a moronic idea. If you want to put extra barriers in the path of young people to get guns, that's an idea you can probably have some good faith compromise on. They are underage. But you don't want a world where all the responsible adults are disarmed and all the cops are too disorganized, or worse, too cowardly to do the job that they're supposed to do. This whole thing is just a clusterfuck. This was a massive fuck-up on behalf of Arredondo, and it's looking like he's thankfully not going to escape responsibility for it, something that does happen far too often.
I have said from day one that every agency that was in that hallway has to be accountable for their actions that day. Everyone. No one will be exempt. That includes local, school, federal, state. Everyone has to explain their actions that day. Everybody has to be accountable.
These are the kind of mistakes that you can't afford to make in this job. And if you want to know why, all you need to do is look at the memorial.